From script to screen, every film is brought to life by visionary creatives and executives, all sharing one mission: to captivate the audience. Hosted by award-winning movie strategist Kevin Goetz, our podcast, Don't Kill the Messenger, offers a filmmaking masterclass through intimate conversations with Hollywood's most influential voices. And now, your host, Kevin Goetz.
Every once in a while, someone comes along who changes the gravitational pull of the business. My guest today has built hit franchises, run a major network, led a major studio, and produced everything from cultural touchstones to the Oscar-nominated film Elvis. She has moved between mediums, film, television, digital, and Broadway, with a creative fearlessness that continues to shape the industry. In a business where versatility is rare, her range is unmatched. That person is Gail Berman. Gail, I am so excited to have you here. I can not even contain myself.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. It's delightful to be here.
We have so much to get into, and I'm just going to jump in, and I'll start with Brooklyn.
Everything leads back to Brooklyn.
We were neighbors.
Yes, we
You
were.
were
Sheepshead Bay.
And I was Bensonhurst.
Oh, okay.
You left pretty early, too, right?
Yeah, I was about 9 months old when we moved to Long Island.
What was a young Gail like growing up?
Very, very lonely, listening to a lot of Broadway shows. When I moved to Philadelphia, when I'm 13, my life takes a very big, significant turn.
Why?
Because I know no one. I literally know no one. And I pick up an instrument, the guitar. I start singing, playing guitar, and it opens a world to me that I hadn't experienced before. And that was sort of a game changer. Then I started to sing and get cast in shows and things like that. So it really opened up something in me that was, I think, waiting to be
Unleashed.
awakened.
Yes. How was your relationship with Mom?
Very close to my parents. Not that they really understood where I was going and what I was doing. In fact, they really did not. But I was always close with them.
I suspect you and I share that very much because I say that my parents were not supportive. However, they weren't unsupportive.
Right. That's exactly the way my parents were. Now, when I come back to Baltimore, which is where they move after Philadelphia, to do Joseph, I go home, I live with them.
How old were you at that time?
I was 22, I think.
So you had just left Maryland? You went to University of Maryland,
I went to University of Maryland.
I did my research.
I graduated from the University of Maryland. That's where I met my future husband.
Of 45 years now?
45 years, yeah.
Mazel tov.
I am a lucky, lucky girl.
So you meet your husband in college?
Yeah. I met him when I was 19. And we've been together since then.
What was it about him at first because that's extraordinary.
Well, he was a little older, so he was more mature than some of the other young men. It was the theater department. He was straight, so that was kind of nice. He had just come out of the Navy, and so he was really a different kind of individual that I'd never kind of met.
Was he an actor?
He was in the theater department to try to be an actor. He became a stand-up comic and ultimately became a comedy writer.
I was going to say, I bet you that, and I can tell you this from my own relationship, part of the longevity has to do with the fact that Neil's so funny.
And Bill is so funny. And it's just the heart of the marriage is how fun it is to be married to him.
So no one really gets you in your familial circle because you had enormous, intellect, ambition, drive, and you produce your first Broadway show when you're 22. You mentioned it before. You said Joseph. It's Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I remember singing that when I was in 7th or 8th grade in music class and being blown away by that Andrew Lloyd Webber score.
It's an incredible score.
And that narrator, Laurie Beachman. Who we lost way too early.
Yes, we did.
Of cancer, I believe, right?
Yes. And the way that role came about was originally a male narrator. We were the first production on Broadway. Just a little bit of the history.
Please.
Right after graduating from college, I moved to New York. I'm just like, I'm ready. I don't know what it is I'm going to do, but I'm moving. I was doing musicals or plays in college. And so not that long after I arrive in New York, I get a call from a friend of mine named Susan Rose, and I knew her in college, and she said that she had seen this show called Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at the Olney Theater that summer after graduating from college. And the Olney Theater was the summer theater of Catholic University, and Catholic University was a big theater school. Most people don't realize that, but Susan Sarandon went there, as did many actors. And she had seen it, and she loved it. And she asked me if I knew anything about it. I did. I was a little bit of a savant who knew a lot of little bits of information. I knew it had been tried before at Philadelphia Playhouse in the Park, and it had not been successful. Anyway, we started talking about it, and she said, well, when are you coming back to Baltimore? And I said, actually, I'm coming back next weekend because my boyfriend is there. I'm going to see my parents. And
Bill
Masters. So she said, well, why don't we get together when you come back and let's talk about this? And so we did. And right then and there, that weekend, we decided to get together and try to produce the Olney Theater production somewhere else. And one of the ideas was Ford's Theater in Washington. Ford's Theater had opened up again as a live theater venue. Frankie Hewitt, Don Hewitt's ex-wife, Frankie Hewitt, was running it. She was sort of a doyen of the Washington scene. And we didn't have any money. We didn't have the rights. We didn't have anything. So we found out that Robert Stigwood was the guy who controlled the rights. And at the time, and this is 1979, Robert Stigwood is about the biggest person in show business. He's a music producer, he's a movie producer, he's a manager, he's everything. And so we just start calling there. I mean, if you can imagine, I'd like to speak with Mr. Stigwood and, go, well, who is this? And eventually Maudie, who was his secretary, who, when this show does open on Broadway, we give Maudie the best seat in the house. I'm just letting you know that. So it ends very well for Maudie. Maudie eventually says, look, girls, he's not going to get on the phone with you. But if you're looking for rights to something, let me lead you to somebody who might be able to help you.
Oh, God bless her.
That was a miracle. And eventually we get led to a man named David Land. And David Land was the co-deputy chair of the Stigwood organization, a very famous British producer. He's the one who brought Lloyd Webber and Rice to Stigwood. And that's how they form a partnership.
Was this their first production, by the way? The first writing together?
Well, there was something called Jeeves before that, but it's really the one that sort of took off. And it was done perennially in the UK.
They called it a rock opera.
Yeah, they did call it a rock opera. And it's a great lesson in how Stigwood's mind worked, because he put Jesus Christ Superstar out, which would come after it, as an album before it ever became a show. It's actually something I've thought about over the years many, many times, is how to think about something in a different way and maybe try it down a different route before you go the other way. And I know that that comes up in your work too. When people are familiar with something, even if it's not what you're showing them, that familiarity becomes something that you can test. And that's something that Stigwood understood. So eventually we do get the rights to do it at Ford's Theater in Washington. We raise $150,000, which honestly could have been $1 million. It could have been $1 billion. We had no money. So it was all like, how is this going to happen? We found a great investor, a man named Melvin Estrin, who was on the board of Ford's Theater in Washington, and he became a great pal of ours for the rest of his life. And eventually we do take that show from the Olney Theater and put it on at Ford's Theater. And the show's doing pretty well. I mean, we're the only two employees. We do everything. We count the tickets at the end of the night to make sure the wrap is right. I mean, we're doing everything. There's no assistant. they would say telex something to us in London, and we'd be like, telex? We barely have
Did
a
you
typewriter.
recast it?
At that time, we used the same cast from the Olney Theater. When we go to New York, that will be a different story.
Did you ever think about putting yourself in? I'm not joking.
It's how I got my equity card, just FYI. I thought, well, let me just do this just in case. I'll put myself as an understudy or something and get my equity card. I never went on, but I did get my equity card that way, just in case.
Who was your narrator?
It was a man, and the role was written for a man. And we did it with a young man playing the role.
Way, way back many centuries ago, not long after the Bible began.
What we don't know is as the show is running, Variety has in its back pages the grosses of the theaters around the country. So they are following the grosses of Ford's Theater in Washington, and there's something going on at Ford's Theater because Ford's Theater is making money. And so we start to get calls from people from New York, unbeknownst to us.
Like
how?
the Schuberts and Niederlanders?
It's not the Schuberts and the Niederlanders yet, but it will be. But it is various producers, some talent, a choreographer, variety of people. And ultimately, a man named Zev Buffman. And Zev Buffman was, at the time, a very big Broadway producer. People started to come down to Washington to see the show. And everybody had an opinion. This is what you should do, and that's what you should do. And we didn't have the rights to take it anywhere else. Let me be clear about that. We had the rights to do it at Ford's Theater in Washington.
Did Stigwood ever come to see it in Washington?
No, but David Land does come to see it with his beautiful wife, Zara. Actually, they're coming to meet with Hal Prince about Evita. And Evita's going to be in Washington.
Oh, that's right.
And this is the same time.
Is that where it started?
No. Evita comes to Broadway, but then they're going to do another production in Washington. So it's 1979 for Evita, or 80. By the time we come to New York, it's 1981. And by the time we go to Broadway, it's January of 1982. So we open in 1980. We run for 9 months. We then shut down to reconfigure to come off Broadway. David says, well, the boys don't want anything other than Evita on Broadway. We're not going to give you those rights, but we'll give you the rights to do it off Broadway.
The boys meaning Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice.
And so...
Did you get a theater off Broadway?
There was a theater off Broadway. It was the same theater that Grease had been in, and it was called, at the time, the Intermedia Theater.
I didn't even know Grease started off Broadway.
Yes, it did. It wasn't called the Intermedia Theater when Grease started there, but when we started there, it was. And that's at 2nd Avenue and 12th Street. It had been an old Yiddish theater. But what happened was we brought in a new director, Tony Tanner, and we started auditioning people. And this young woman came in, and she blew us away, a woman named Laurie Beachman.
But why did you invite her to sing?
Well, we were auditioning for all of the roles.
Because there aren't many female parts in that.
There's a whole female chorus. She just blew us away so much that we were like, what can we do with her? We have to have her in this. She's amazing. And we changed the part for her.
That is just unbelievable. You hear these stories of that happening, but someone on sheer talent walks in, blows you away with her vocal prowess.
And it changes the show forever. She changes the show forever.
And please, listeners, listen to the original cast recording with Laurie Beachman. She's an extraordinary talent, and it blew me away. Chained and bound, afraid, alone. And you were nominated for 7 Tony Awards.
We were.
Is your girlfriend also 23 at that point?
At this point, I think we're 24 or 25.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying.
It's a little time in there.
It's pretty damn impressive.
We are the youngest producers in the league of the Broadway Producers League. Now it's the
Did you make any money?
Of American theaters and producers. We kept afloat, is what I'll tell you. You're either making a killing in the theater or you're just hanging on. And we were learning the ropes as we went, and we were hanging on.
How'd you move to Broadway?
When we moved off Broadway, we had a partner, Zev Buffman, and Zev knew the ropes, and Zev was sort of always wheeling and dealing. And he said we should just move this. And they ultimately gave us the rights to do it. We moved it to the Royale Theater on 45th Street.
That's where Grease played.
It was where Grease played. We had a very similar route to Grease.
And Evita was still on Broadway.
And Evita was on Broadway. So now they have 2 shows on Broadway. They would come to have several more as time went on simultaneously. And that was owned by the Schuberts. So we got to know Bernie Jacobs, Jerry Schoenfeld, and the show also was going on the road.
And it was a great show on the road.
Went on the road to the Niederlander houses.
It's only in one act, isn't it? Like 90 minutes?
It was actually 90 minutes. We divided it into 2 acts. So we made it slightly longer evening, but believe me, easily play in 1 act and very enjoyable for families. Anyway, it was an extraordinary thing to have happen.
And the Tonys at 25, what was that like?
Well, it was all about the dress. But I did get the red dress, and it wasn't until the Palisades Fires that my home was damaged. So all of my clothing was taken out, and that dress, which was in a special bag somewhere, was taken out too. So no idea if I'll ever see the dress again.
You
but
haven't
I
gotten
did
it yet
keep
back?
No, because of all the insurance issues that everybody's dealing with. So you can't touch anything until they make the settlement. So it's in some box somewhere. We still have the dress.
So, Gail, let me ask you, how did you make the transition from Broadway wonderkind to Los Angeles?
Well, it's an interesting
television.
route because it has a lot to do with my husband's trip to Los Angeles.
Did you love TV, by the way, growing up?
I watched a lot of TV.
You did?
Frankly, I watched a lot of movies on TV.
But theater was your first love.
Theater was my first love. I never thought I would do anything other than work in the theater. My entire life was always about one thing. And here it was, at a very early age, I got that thing. It happened. So I produced Joseph and Hurly Burly and Blood Knot and The Nerd. Those were my Broadway shows.
And that was in that period of time,
in
let's say,
one
for
decade.
the next 5. Yeah, I was going to say for the next 5, 6, 7 years.
At the end of that time, my partner, Susan Rose, was getting married, and she was off to do certain things, and everything was changing.
I do want to say I do very much remember that production of Hurly Burly.
It was amazing.
And David Rabe was roommates with one of my best friends, Jerry Panessa. And Jerry, who's married to someone you know, Jody Brockway.
Oh, yeah.
And so Jerry and David were really super close. So I would get inside scoop on that. That was some production. Wasn't Cynthia Nixon in that? And
yes,
didn't
she was.
do 2
Yes,
shows
she
at
did.
the exact same time? How did you work that out?
It wasn't me that worked it out. It was Mike Nichols who worked it out because he had directed both of his shows. For me, getting in this world, I mean, the headiest of worlds, and the way we got brought in was through a man named Fred Zolo, who was similarly producing on Broadway at the time. And so we wound up coming in with him, brought the show into New York. Obviously, getting to meet Mike Nichols was, for me, unbelievable. I mean, there's a lot of unbelievable things that happened over this decade. But at the end of it, I have no idea what I want to do. I don't want to just keep raising money because we were living in the city, had no children. Bill is on the road as a comedian, and he's writing. And he sells a script to Disney. And in the old days, when you sold a script, you had the opportunity to get a 2-picture deal. So you'd sell your one that you wrote, and you'd have another one
This was for a movie or
For
a
a
series?
movie.
Oh.
Well, he didn't write it for Disney, but it sold to Disney.
Did it ever get made?
It never got made. It was called Good News, Bad News. And you had, I think, on your show, David Permit.
Yes.
David Permit was the producer who bought that script. So we always hold David very fondly in our hearts.
There's no one like him.
So a long story way of telling you this is we're in California, and then we come back to New York because we're trying to figure out what to do. Should we pack up now? What should we do? And we come back, and on my answering machine, literally, remember answering machines?
Oh, yeah.
A friend of mine named Betsy Borns, who's a wonderful comedy writer, leaves me a message on this tape. And she says, "Hi, I'm looking for you." Remember, no cell phones. HBO's doing this new thing, and they're looking for an eclectic group of executives, and I know you'd be perfect for this. And she says, "Give me a call." So I call her. We're just back in New York. And she tells me, I want you to meet this woman. Her name is Bonnie Burns. Stu Smiley's involved. This one's involved. You know all the people. And they're going to love you. I go, I don't know anything about TV. What are you talking about? She goes, I know you don't know anything about TV, but you know about writers and you know this and that, and they will love you. They're looking for a different kind of crowd. So Betsy Borns calls me, and I go to meet Bonnie Burns.
Her instincts are extraordinary.
Fabulous. She's incredibly funny, and her husband, Jonathan Shapiro, is a great writer. They're fantastic. So Betsy does this. I go to meet Bonnie Burns. She asks me the question, you don't know anything about making TV? I said, no, I don't know anything. I want to be clear. I've never been in a studio. I don't know anything about it. She goes, well, do you know the difference between a 3/4 inch tape and a 1/2 inch tape? And I go, 1/4 of an inch. I mean, that's the only thing I can tell you. That's all I know. And she laughs. She thinks it's funny. And I go,
but you meant it.
I'm not kidding you, but I'm a fast learner and I know writing. And I know writing and I know writing. So somehow or other, she decides to hire me. And I become first an associate producer of this brand new cable channel, and then the executive producer of this brand new cable channel, which is being done out of 23rd Street Studios, and it's brand new. So I learn how to produce television in a studio setting. I learn all about how to start a cable network. I learn a lot of things at a time when all of this stuff is changing. After about 1.5 years, Viacom and HBO decide to merge their 2 comedy channels, and they call it Comedy Central. And when this is starting to happen, Bill's career is really heating up in LA, and he says, look, it's time to go. We drove across country. I come to Los Angeles with no job.
But Bill has a job.
Bill, thank God, someone's making some money.
Where'd you guys live?
In Whitley Heights.
Oh, right near the Hollywood Bowl.
Right near the Hollywood Bowl. It's like a little tree house. It's so cute. I love it. I think it's just so perfect. So right before I leave New York, I get a call from a friend of mine named David Goodman. David Goodman would become the head of the Writers Guild. You might know David Goodman's name. But anyway, David, who's a friend of mine, a writer, he says to me, I'm working on this show in LA, and he knew I was coming to Los Angeles. And he said, they're looking for an executive at this company. And I said, well, what's the company? And he goes, it's called Sandollar. And it's a woman named Candace Farrell. And she's looking for a number 2 in TV. And I was like, I'd love to meet her. I'm going. I don't know anyone. I'm like, great. I'd love to talk to her. Give me her number. He said, well, I'll tell her and she'll give you a call. And I have, by this point, set up a phone in the place we're going to move. So we have an answering machine there. And when we get to Los Angeles, there's a message saying, give us a call. We'd like to meet you. And I do that right away. I give her a call. And I go over to Sunset Gower Studios, which is where they're shooting this sitcom that they're making. So I meet her. I have a terrific rapport with her, really nice conversation. And she says, well, I'm going to have to introduce you to my boss. I can't hire you unless you meet him. And I'm like, who's he? And his name is Sandy Gallin. And, they'll call you.
Who, of course, biggest claim to fame is Dolly Parton.
Right. Well, the company's called Sandollar. Sandy and Dolly, Sandollar. That's how the name comes about. And that's why when we talk about Buffy, so many people discovered that Dolly was involved with Buffy. It becomes such a big deal on the internet. You can pull up Dolly's name and you see Buffy, and there's all kinds of talk about Dolly and Buffy. Anyway, I eventually do go to meet Sandy, who is one of the great Hollywood characters of all time. And he says to me, when he sees my resume, and this is really true, he says to me, if you've done all these things, how come I don't know you? Which is just the best line to start an interview with. I'm like, I don't know why you don't know me, but I did all these things.
Because you did do all those things.
And here I am, starting again. And this is what I like to talk to young people about, which is when I went to the Comedy Channel, I was discussing it with my husband. Should I take the job? Should I not take the job? Should I go back to producing? What should I do? And he said something that really remains true for me to this very day. He said, why don't you try it and leave your posters at home? And it was a great metaphor for so much of my life, which is if you're going to do it and try something and start again, do not put your old posters up on the wall. You just have to buckle down, learn it, and do it again. I listen so much in my head to that mantra a lot. I will remember it a lot of times because I've done a lot of different things. And in order to try, you have to not take that baggage with you. It's too much, and it will weigh you down.
Such sage advice. When we come back, we're going to talk to Gail about her massively successful television career. We'll be back in a moment. Listeners, the Motion Picture and Television Fund is a nonprofit charitable organization that supports working and retired members of the entertainment community. This wonderfully run organization offers assistance for living and aging with dignity and purpose in the areas of health and social services, including temporary financial assistance, case management, and residential living, and has been a crucial lifeline to thousands during and beyond critical times that our industry continues to experience. To learn more, visit mptf.com. Please join me in helping others in our industry during times of need. There are so many ways to offer support and get involved. Thank you. We're back with Gail Berman. Gail, you are now at Sandollar. What do you do there that was the most, I guess, important for advancing Gail's career?
Well, for advancing my career, I think there's no doubt that doing Buffy the Vampire Slayer would become the gift that keeps on giving.
I did want to ask you about Angel, too.
Very, very quickly, almost impossibly quickly, we went from show to spinoff. I think it was probably the shortest amount of time any show had ever gone from a show to having a spinoff.
I can't believe how fast the cult following began on that show. How did you cast Sarah Michelle Gellar?
Well, originally we cast Sarah for the role of Cordelia. We did not cast her as Buffy. And we can't find a Buffy. And I cannot tell you who, probably Marcia Schulman, who was casting the show at the time. It was probably Marcia that says, we should see Sarah again for Buffy. I said, well, then what are we going to do for Cordelia? She's like, if you don't have Buffy, you don't have the show. She's right.
Very true.
So we do see Sarah again, and she's 17 years old. And she comes in, and she just nails it.
Wow.
She is Buffy. And
you mean you felt it right away?
Right away.
It's like walking into a house that you're going to buy. It's the Laurie Beachman story. Give me another one that was love at first sight.
How about Austin Butler? How about when we saw Austin's screen test for Elvis? There were a total of 4 screen tests that day. His was the last. So Baz showed us the 3 others first, and then Austin. And Austin was Elvis.
And that went on to garner you an Academy Award nomination.
It did indeed.
That must have been an unbelievable experience.
10 years, unbelievable.
I love that movie. Give me another one.
David Boreanaz was the exact same thing. We couldn't find Angel. And actually, Marcia Schulman and I got into an argument about it because I said to her, you don't understand. And she goes, oh, I understand. I understand all right. And David had done nothing. 1 episode of Married with Children. That's it. Small role. And we cast him. And then, of course, I would cast him several other times in my career, which I had the good benefit of casting him 2 more times.
How do you get to Fox?
So when I leave Sandollar, it's because I've just had my twins, and
Did you take maternity leave? I can see you probably bringing him into the office.
When you work for Sandy Gallin, there is no such thing as maternity leave. He called me literally in the hospital. So,
Gail, Carol Baum.
Well, I'm sure
she's been a guest.
Yes. I'm sure Carol told you fabulous Sandy stories. I mean, the Sandy stories are amazing. And the fact is that Carol and Howard had produced Buffy as a feature film for Sandollar.
Howard Rosenman. He's fantastic.
And Carol Baum.
By the way, I just saw him. And I'm going to be getting together with him at the Angel Awards.
Oh, my
Project
goodness.
Angel
Well,
Food.
I love them both. They worked on the film side of the company. I worked in the television side. So we were not in the same offices, but they had produced this movie called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And funnily enough, when I got to Sandollar, I decided to read everything that the company was doing to sort of get familiar with everything. I didn't know the company. I didn't know all their projects. So I thought, well, I'm just going to take a stack of scripts home and read some. And Buffy was one of those scripts, the feature film.
And you saw it as a show?
And I was like, God, this would make a great TV show. Well, it would not right away because the movie was waiting to be released and it came out and didn't do that well as a feature film. But I literally put the script on my shelf and thought maybe one day we'll go back to that. And that is indeed what happened.
Did you use my facility to test it?
Yeah,
ASI?
I'm sure. Kevin, I was in ASI like 3 weeks ago.
I was just going to say, you lived in ASI as the head of the network.
I ate more.
M&Ms?
If it's Tuesday, it must be Mediterranean.
Oh,
if
exactly.
it's Wednesday, it must be dumplings and Chinese food. I ate more meals.
So ASI is a company I bought. It's been about almost 13 years now.
Wow.
And I wanted to thrust myself into the television business because, as you know, Gail, I was so immersed in movies. And every time I'd go into the television research departments, they'd all say, well, we love your experience, but what about television? What about television? I never really could make a good defense for why they should hire.
Sooner or later, everyone has to come to TV.
Why they should hire Screen Engine. And ultimately, after I bought it, it was a pretty dusty brand at that point because, you know, it was analog dials and so forth. And they weren't doing quantitative testing. They were just doing sort of the focus groups and these small 48 seats.
Spent lots and lots of time.
And I was going to say, so we really built the business up tremendously as a result of that. Let's go back to, you have your twins.
And Sandy has made a deal for the company to be at Disney. And it's so far away from my home in Pacific Palisades because I can't get home to even put my kids to bed. And so I managed, believe it or not, to get 20th Century Fox to offer him a deal, but only in the television area, so that I could just be on the Fox lot, which is where the company had started when I first started working there. It was on the Fox lot. But he wanted the film studio too, and the film studio at Disney wanted both television and film. So I was like, okay, well, let me go. I'm just going to go produce Buffy and Angel. I'll have the kids. I'm going to work out of Santa Monica, which is where the warehouses were for Buffy, and Paramount was where Angel was shot. And it would be really much better lifestyle for me. And he says eventually, okay. And that's when I leave running his company and I just go to produce Buffy and Angel. That's it. That's what I'm doing with my life. And as is very typical in my career, I get a phone call from somebody.
On the answering machine.
No, there's no more answering machine. I'm happy to report. This is an actual call in my office from my dear friend, Nancy Josephson, who is an agent and a wonderful person, incredible woman. And she goes, oh, you won't believe this. I just came from lunch with Peter Chernin. And I said, oh, that's nice. How's Peter? Hadn't seen him. Didn't know him very well, but you know, I was making 2 television shows for him. So Nancy calls me. She said, you won't believe you came up at lunch with Peter Chernin. And I said, I came up at lunch? How did that happen? She said, he asked about you and what you were doing. I said, oh, well, that's great. You know, I'm producing 2 shows for him. He doesn't even know what I'm doing. So, well, he'd really like to talk to you. You should give him a call. I was like, okay, wow. And it hadn't been that long since I had left Sandy, so it was really only a couple of months. And I call Peter's office and I set a meeting with him, and I go in, and he is delightful, as he always is. He's a charmer's charmer and a brilliant businessman and a great mentor of mine. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm doing these 2 shows. I'm really happy. I had the kids. Everything's good. And he said, well, what are you going to do? Like, I don't know. I was feeling pretty good. He said, well, I have an idea for you. And have you ever heard of a man named Arnon Milchan? I said, well, I have read about him. And he said, well, we are making a deal with him. Nobody knows it. He's at Warner Brothers now.
Right.
But he's going to come here, and he wants to start a television company. And I think you would be a good person for him to meet. So I'm like, well, I just left Sandy.
Do I want to get into this again? Except it was on the Fox lot.
And that will come up, because when I finally do meet him, he says, well, we're on the Warner Brothers lot. I go, no, can't do it. If you let me start it at Buffy, if you literally let me start it at my offices, I'll do it. But not if I have to go to Warner Brothers. No way. So I have this interview, and I go to meet him. We have a really nice meeting, and then I don't hear anything. I mean, literally, I hear nothing. And because the company is going to be 50% owned by Fox and 50% owned by New Regency, I have to meet a man named David Grant, who's working for Fox. It's a dual reporting structure. Not so easy. But I have these 2 interviews. I don't hear a word. I'm like, okay, I guess they didn't like me. They're looking for something, not me.
And you had the perfect situation. So
and I was really, I was way okay with where I was. No harm, no foul. No harm, no foul. I gave it a whirl. And one morning, I'm up getting my kids ready to have breakfast and me ready to go to the warehouses. And I get a call in my home. I pick up the phone. Hello. Hold on for Mr. Milchan. He gets on the phone. He's in Israel, and somebody's in Paris, and Chernin is here, and David Grant is there. It's all these guys saying, hey, you got the job. And I'm like, what job? Like, it's been so long. Anyway, I do accept the job, and I start this company for Arnon called Regency Television. And I do start it in the warehouses at Buffy, and eventually I will take that to the Fox lot because it gets too big to be in my basement offices at Buffy. And this is where we will do Malcolm in the Middle, Roswell, The Bernie Mac Show. And so the 2.5 years that I'm there, it's an unbelievable run. I mean, no one has a run like this. Everything I touched was fantastic and would go the distance. And then I got another one of those calls, and this time it was from Peter Chernin directly to me. And he said, I want you to come to the network to run the network. And that's how that happened.
What were you thinking when you got the call?
I think I was a little bit shaky. I actually literally said to him, oh, Arnon will never let me go. And he goes, you don't have to worry about Arnon. I'll take care of Arnon. And I was like, oh, well, okay. He goes, but you have to make sure that when we all get together, it's a big surprise. So I said, okay. And a few days later, we all get together, and I'm super surprised. And I go to the network. And they'd had a new president every 18 months.
How long were you at the network?
I was there for, I think, 5.5 years.
Wow. I just want to jump in and say one thing about Peter Chernin. I got one of those similar calls, not calls, but I saw him at a screening, and he comes up to me, and this is about 30 years ago, and he said to me, what are you doing?
See?
And I said, what do you mean?
What do you mean?
What do you want to do? And I said, a lot of things. He says, well, come see me. And I went to see him, and he said, would you have any interest in being an executive? And I said, I'd like to produce, and I'd love a first look deal here. And then he introduced me to who I already knew. It was Tom Jacobson and Laura Ziskin and Chris Meledandri, who had the family division, and one other person who was running Searchlight. He did that, and I never forgot it, and I always loved him for it.
Well, he's a remarkable man, and he is, I think, the smartest executive I've ever worked for or I've ever known.
He's also extraordinarily loyal.
He was very loyal to me till I left.
Well, let's talk about you leaving, because who wouldn't be upset when you're so gifted? You were there how many years again?
5.5 years.
5.5 years, which is a hugely long run for a television network head.
And I had brought the network to #1.
And you get recruited by Paramount Pictures by whom?
I'd gotten a call the year earlier from Sherry, when Sherry was still there. And it was a lovely, lovely call. Have I ever thought about it? And I said,
because she knew she was retiring.
Yeah, I don't know if she saw me in that role or she saw me in another role, but I basically said I'm under contract and there's just no way that is ever going to happen.
Is that when you started your friendship with her?
Super flattered. Well, I actually started my friendship with her because my lawyer, Nancy Rose, made me go to one of those women's functions. And she said to me, get 3 numbers from 3 women and follow up and have a lunch with 3 women. And I was like, okay, I'll do that.
And who were the 3?
One of them was Carol Black. One of them was Sherry Lansing. And the third was the woman who was then head of PBS. I never actually had the lunch with her. But Carol Black and Sherry Lansing. And it was wonderful.
Because Sherry introduced the 2 of us.
That's right.
Sherry said to me, you don't know Gail Berman? I said, no, but I'd like to. She goes, oh, honey, it's done. And she made a shidduch. Well, I got this call from her. It was lovely. And so when it came back around the second time, and I'll tell you how that happened, I thought, maybe the universe is trying to tell me something. I'm not having really big success with my new contract negotiation. It's been going on a long time. They don't seem to want to pay me what I think my value is. Nothing. At first, I wasn't really thinking of ever leaving. I was sort of thinking, oh, well, this will be good leverage or whatever. But anyway, it became like a runaway train. I got a visit from my friend Lloyd Braun, and he said, let's have lunch. And he came over to the lot, and we had lunch on the lot. And he had just gone to Yahoo. And I thought maybe he's coming to see me about going to Yahoo. And he said, no, that's not why I'm here. I'm here because my friend Brad Gray has asked me to come and talk to you about coming to Paramount. And that was really from left field. I knew Brad a little bit, not a lot. Knew Bernie very well. That would be Brad Gray and Bernie Brillstein.
I love Bernie Brillstein. And I was like, whoa, this is a big surprise. And I said, well, I'll definitely think about it. And he said, well, Brad's going to call you. And I said, well, yeah, I'd be interested in talking to him. Sure.
Never give up a job you weren't offered.
Exactly. And, I don't have any regrets about anything in my career. I've learned from every single thing I've done, and I've done some great things and I've done some stupid things. And I think that's what makes a career.
You've done far many more great things, and that's always the key to great success. But of course, you're going to have failures along the way.
And when it came out and it broke in a way it wasn't supposed to break, all the things that started off on the wrong foot happened.
Plus for Chernin and for the Fox negotiations.
There was a lot of anger there.
Yeah, of course.
I don't think they saw that coming. And I told Peter, and he was like, okay, what do we have to do to... I go, no, I've accepted the job. And it was a big deal.
Of course it was.
Leaving Fox at that time was a big deal. A TV girl going to Paramount was like, you'd think that they had found somebody who was building cars, like television, going to Paramount. Except for the people who had actually done that, like Michael Eisner, who sent me a very nice note going, don't listen to all of this. This is
right, because there's been a lot of
TV people have made this.
Who'd never made it in the movie business.
But no women. And Brandon had had a bad run, too.
It was a risky move.
Yeah.
It was a ballsy move.
I didn't realize how risky it actually was, to be honest with you.
Wow. What does that mean for you?
I was excited at the opportunity to do something new, and I was very optimistic about it. At the time, the companies were splitting. Viacom was splitting. So there was Paramount Pictures, and then there was CBS. And Les Moonves, who's a good friend of mine, called me up and said to me, you're on the wrong side of this split. I need you to know that. And that was very telling about what would happen. But he would come to help me a little bit later on when I called him about Star Trek, which was really I would say, of the 2 years that I was at Paramount, was the thing that was the best. You
relaunched the franchise.
I relaunched it. I got it back from CBS. And he would never have given it to Brad. May Brad rest in peace, or Tom Freston. There was no love lost. I asked him for it. I explained why he wasn't going to be putting it on for the next few years. It was ending its run on UPN. I said, I need a favor really badly. I have nothing here. And he said, okay, I will give you 18 months from the time we get off this call to put it in production. I go, Les, nothing in the movie business works like that. He goes, take it or leave it. I go, I'll take it. And that is how Star Trek came back to the Paramount side of the company.
You couldn't make errors. You had to hire the right people right out of that gate.
And of course, where did I go? I went to the TV people. I went to JJ, Damon Lindelof. That's who I went to. And I knew they could work fast. And
so smart.
That is how that happened.
Now, why, after you were there for only, I want to say, a couple of months, you shared this with me that you basically called your attorney and said, get me out of this?
12 weeks. I called my attorney in New York.
What happened?
Well, I was hired to run Paramount Pictures, MTV Films, Nickelodeon Films. That was the job.
Sure.
Unfortunately, they didn't want to tell the people at MTV or Nickelodeon that's what I was hired to do. So
you got a resistance everywhere you went.
Every day, everything. So it was a no-win. Brad Gray said something to me. He said, you have to sign these people, using a manager's term.
Sure.
You have to sign them.
You got to earn their trust.
Right. And while that's not exactly what I thought I was there to do, I did try to do that. I did. I took it to heart what he said, that these were people who understood their brands inside and out. They needed to be courted properly by me. And we started a relationship and tried to figure our way through it. I wouldn't say it was particularly successful, but I wound up liking them. I understood a lot better that Judy and Van and Seema, eventually, it wasn't her in the beginning, but they were protectors of their brands. So nobody was particularly happy I was there. Most of all, me, maybe.
And it took you 2 years to extricate yourself.
Yes, it did. It took me 2 years to extricate
And the worst 2 years of your professional career, I think, because you were just not happy.
I was very unhappy, which I'd never been before in any of my work. I felt sick in the morning, getting up and going to work. And I felt like no matter what I did, if I went left, everybody was going right. If I went right, everyone was going left. And what I should have done, and I didn't do this because actually Tom Freston asked me not to do this, I should have let people go when I arrived.
Everyone says that you need your own people.
I didn't do that. And I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to work hard with this group.
Is there anyone from that regime that you have kept close with? Karen Rosenfeld?
I remember going to her office to see her. I thought, maybe I can get something going with Karen. I did get something going with Jason Blum. We put him in the horror business. And so that was kind of great to see what happened.
That was during the Paranormal Activity?
Yeah. Paranormal Activity came out of my time there. It came out after me. But
Yeah, I remember.
anyway, it was really tough. I wasn't particularly well liked. I just couldn't get it right. Actually, like is not the right word.
What's the right word?
I wasn't respected there.
Huh.
And that was very troubling to me because you can't really get a job done unless people respect you.
You know, it's funny because from an outside standpoint, because I was testing your movies, I felt people absolutely respected you, but who cares what I think? It's the perception that you felt.
That was the perception I had.
Now, when you left, it's when I first met you after the fact. I mean, we met because I'd done all your testing, but we didn't know each other. And I remember meeting you for lunch when you launched the Jackal Group, and you literally said to me, "This is the happiest I have ever been in my career." Was that true?
Well, I think it was. I think because I got the opportunity to do really whatever I wanted to do. If I wanted to work in film, if I wanted to work in digital, I could work in digital. If I wanted to work in television, I could. And obviously the theater, which is what Fox allowed me to tap back into.
And did you?
That's when I got the rights to the musical Black Swan, which is opening at ART in May of 2026 at the American Repertory Theater at Harvard. That's the stop with an intent to go to New York. Yeah, Darren Aronofsky and Kevin McCullum and Scott Frankel are my partners.
They are?
Yeah.
You remember I worked on that movie.
I don't know that I knew that, but I always think that you work on every movie, Kevin.
Well, I got to tell you, that was a particularly great experience because it never tested well. But I remember going up to Nancy Utley after the first screening and Steve Galula and saying, "You guys, there's something majorly special here." And Claudia, and I said, "This is something like really intense." Remember, there was no special effects. So she didn't have the wings or the things. And it was just, I thought, a work of art. Yeah. And clearly I was right.
And we've been developing it for several years, and it's very exciting now.
You.
It's going to happen. So we're all
You and my girlfriend, Paula Wagner.
Yeah, Paula's doing amazing.
Girls. I know. She's doing High Noon in London now. Gail, we could talk forever. And you really are somebody that I look up to enormously, and somebody who has done such service and good for our business. And I thank you on behalf of so many of us. If there's a word for a mensch, for a woman, you are the mensch of women.
And you are a mensch and a seer. And that's something really special. Somebody who understood how to get butts in seats. And that is so hard to do. And I salute you for an incredible career doing that.
Thank you. To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. For more insights into filmmaking, audience testing, and the business of Hollywood, I invite you to check out my books, Audienceology and How to Score in Hollywood, at Amazon, or through my website at kevingetz360.com. You can also follow me on my social media. Next time on Don't Kill the Messenger, I'll welcome the prolific and Academy Award-winning producer, Chuck Roven. Until then, I'm Kevin Goetz, and to you, our listeners, I appreciate you being part of the movie-making process. Your opinions matter.